Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Informed Chiropractor. I'm Dr. Don Macdonald, your host. Today, we get to fly over to Germany and do an interview with Dr. Aileen Hurkett. She is in a town called Spire, and it's in the southwest of Germany. She's an AECC grad from Bournemouth in UK from 2015, and she's been a member of our Informed Chiropractor group for multiple years. She has been to a few of our seminars for the Macdonald Safety Corridor, and she's going to share a little bit of her story about how she got into chiropractic, some of the things she's done to really dial in her into the vitalistic model of chiropractic care, neurologically focused, and some of the polyvagal theory things that she has implemented in her life. She's also had a little bit of a trauma that they've really recently experienced. Her and her husband practice together, and she's going to talk a little bit about how she's helped use some of the skills from the polyvagal theory to help regulate to get through that. So I hope you enjoy this episode. You're in a little town. What's it called? Spire in
Yes,
southwest Germany.
exactly.
That's cool. That's great. So I always like to get the perspective because especially chiropractors over from Canada and the United States, a lot of times they don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. So it's always nice to hear what somebody's doing in a totally different country way over in Europe. So
Yeah,
with
and a very small area as well.
yes, no, that I'm super excited. So let's start off with your chiropractic origin story. How did you hear about chiropractic?
That's actually really interesting because so in Germany, chiropractic is not regulated at all. So you can literally do a weekend course and call yourself a chiropractor. So it's not very popular and not very well known. And I remember when I finished my A levels and I really had no idea what to do with my life. So I thought, let's go traveling to Australia. So that's
Oh,
what I did. And
so you grew up in
my
Germany?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in this small town where we live now with our kids my whole life. And
Oh,
it's southwest of Germany. We had 17 degrees today, so spring is coming. It's called the Tuscany of Germany because you have loads of wine here. It's actually really beautiful.
oh, really?
I have to remember to take a bottle next time we see each other because I know you
Totally.
guys like
We
wine as
totally
well.
love wine. Yes.
I really have to remember it. It's actually, yeah, it's very well known for its wine. But anyway, so my grandma went to a chiropractor. She was from northern Germany, and she said to me, "I sent you a newspaper article. I think this could be really good for you." So she sent me this one newspaper article that I read, and I thought, "This sounds really cool. I think I'm just going to apply for it." So I applied in England and in Wales, and I thought England sounded better because it was right by the beach. And then I cut my time short in Australia and pretty much just did a quick stopover in Germany and then went straight to England. And yeah, was never adjusted by a chiropractor. I had never even talked to a chiropractor. I just went after this one article because I just thought it sounded so cool.
Really?
And yes, my youngest sister, a year after me, she started studying chiropractic as well because clearly she thought it was so impressive as well.
Wow, that must have been a pretty good article. We should keep that article around here somewhere. I was like, change your whole life from one article.
Definitely. And I actually found it a few months ago and it really brought back so many emotions. And I just thought, how freaking crazy. One article. And I went to live in another country. I had no friends. I knew nobody. I didn't even speak English that well. Yes. And just shaped my whole life from there on.
That's crazy. Okay, so this is interesting. So you go to AECC
Yes,
and
exactly.
like when it my curiosity is when did you actually get your first adjustment?
Actually, from my roommate in our living room, probably like 2 or 3 months into the course. I remember I had like quite headaches and quite bad rib pain. And he was like, I'm going to adjust you. And I remember my neck went off like a rocket. So every time I'm adjusting a patient for the first time, I know exactly how they feel because I thought somebody just fired a gun next to my ear. That's how it sounded when he adjusted my neck.
And did how was it? Did you like what did you feel like? How did you feel after your first adjustment? Do you remember?
Pretty light, and I think I slept like a baby afterwards. And I think it actually took until I graduated. No, I got adjusted by, I want to say, proper chiropractors when I was still studying. But I would say from a really skilled chiropractor, I probably got my first adjustment after I graduated. So Yeah, a long time until I got a really good adjustment.
I find that so fascinating because we were just recently at Life West and we were doing like a technique adjusting seminar for the students there, and a lot of students had never been to a chiropractor before, and the first adjustment that they got was in the student clinic, and then they kind of like it wasn't that great of an adjustment, and so I thought that would be so interesting going through school where the product that you are going to be offering the world, the only time you've experienced it, like you got a good like you got a pretty good adjustment, so you actually felt good after. But I can only imagine if you go through school, like you took your whole life on hold, get tons of debt, and then you don't have that great of an adjustment,
Yeah.
and you go, this is what I'm offering, like when I graduate. Like I think that would be interesting. So, like, how did you keep excited about chiropractic when you hadn't when you still hadn't experienced it? Were you thinking, well, at some point I'll experience it, or like what did you feel about that? How did you feel about that going through school?
That's a really interesting question because I thought about this a lot as well because I'm very different now than I was in college. In college, I would say I was quite the segmental musculoskeletal chiropractor, thinking about certain segments and muscles and massaging them and whatever. And then when we graduated, we completely changed whatever we did. I don't know. I still just love chiropractic the way it was taught at AECC as well. We did have a really good tutor. He did Gonstead classes twice a week, I think. I can't remember anymore. At least I went there once or twice a week, and he was a very big motivator. And we did have a lot of chiropractors speaking to us every now and again. And actually, it was super interesting. I met one of them, and she really inspired me to go into pediatric chiropractic. And I met her at one of your seminars 2 years ago. And I went up to her and I said, "Oh my God, you're one of the reasons why I'm so inspired to adjust kids." And it was super cool because I looked at her and I thought, I somehow remember this lady really well. Who is this? And then I connected the dots and I thought, oh, okay, you are that person.
No way. That's so
Hmm.
cool. That's awesome. Well, it's
I
funny when
think
you run into them later. Yeah.
yes. And I did love neurology. So we did have a lot of not functional neurology, but I loved studying. I always loved learning new things. I think that's really what kept me going. And also I had a really good group of people, my sister, my husband now, and a few other people. And we just had a really great time doing chiropractic and living by the beach and learning new things. It was just really good time, I think.
That's so great. And how did you meet Carl?
Um, this is not very not the coolest story. We met at a party called Pimps and Hookers. So the boys were dressed up as pimps and the girls as hookers.
That is awesome.
We did not think that this night would be the start of the rest of our lives together, but it definitely was. So we met really early on as well. I think I was only 4 months at ACC, and that's how. And then we met, and we've been together ever since. Had our third child last year, and we are running a clinic together
Yeah.
usually. So yes,
That's
and we're
crazy. And
still
was
really
he
nice.
in the same year as you, or was he in a different year? Or
He was a year above me, but
yeah.
he unfortunately had to retake a year, so we actually graduated together, which was pretty good in the
Yeah.
end.
Okay. Well, and you know, like me and Brandy met in a bar too, so like it's kind of we're totally
But I'm still so grateful, even though it's so not like spectacular. I'm nothing against dating apps, but I think it was still so nice to have that human connection
yeah.
and instant spark, to think, oh,
Yes.
cool, I really like this person. I met him and we're so totally different. We still are. And I think if I had seen him on an app, I would have just not met him because he's so different to me, and which is everything I need. So I'm really, really grateful for that experience still.
That's the same as me and Brandy. I had to wear her down over 4 months after we met her in the bar until she's totally like, you're a white picket fence guy. I am not interested in that right now. And
Mhm.
it's funny. So, but again, I always say the opposites always end up attracting, because if you're the exact same person, then it kind of gets boring if you're the same. You got to kind of keep everything a little bit different, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about when you graduated. Where did you go? Did you go into practice right away, or were you associate, or what did you do right after you graduated? Because you guys both graduated together.
We did. And we went straight to Germany because we thought it's better to learn the language now for Carl. And if we ever decide to go back to England, that's easy for us to do. So we both started in associate jobs, but we had to travel a lot because, again, there are not that many chiropractors here. Like the closest chiropractor to me is like 30 minutes away, which is quite a long drive in Germany. I know not in Canada or America, but in Germany it's quite spread out.
Yes.
So after 2 years being associates, we decided that we wanted to go self-employed because we just hated that traveling in the car, because we worked in different clinics as well. And then after 2 years after graduating, we started our own clinic in
2 years
in my hometown.
Oh yeah.
After 2 years.
And how did you decide the hometown? Did you that was your home base where you wanted to go back to, or what made you guys decide to do that?
We first moved to a bigger city and we both hated it. Carl is the literal description of a country bumpkin. He grew up in a house and there were like 3 other houses on the road and there was nothing else for 15 kilometers. So
where did he grow up? In England?
Yeah, in England, in the countryside, near to Bristol.
Okay.
And yes, and I didn't like big cities either. We love nature. We like going there in our free time. We love cycling. So that's how we decided to go back to my hometown, which is a small town. And yeah, that's why we set up a clinic here, just because we really felt this is the place where we want to be.
Mm-hmm. And so when you first started practice, was there a chiropractor there at all, or were you the first chiropractor in that town?
First chiropractor in this town.
Wow. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, because nowadays you don't hear that too often, where you'll have like young grads move to a town that doesn't even have a chiropractor. So was it like it could either be really easy to grow your practice or really hard? Because if nobody even knows what a chiropractor is, like, was it a challenge to kind of get the message out there when they don't even really know what you do?
I have no real comparison, because I ask myself that a lot as well, because we do think about moving back to England at some point, which is going to be different because there's going to be way more competition.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like growing our clinic was relatively easy. I remember we still worked as associates in another clinic, so we did have our basic income covered, which was quite a relief. And so I think after 2 months, we had like 20 new patients in 1 month. And I thought, wow, we had so many new patients. And from there on, it just grew and grew. And it's just so cool to think, because I said to Carl as well, when we had our first child, so 5 years ago, we were still doing single adjustments every 20 minutes. And now I'm doing 4 to 5 people in 30 minutes. And I feel so much better finishing the shift. And it's just so cool to think what we have changed in 5 years. And if we ever set up a clinic anywhere else, I know a lot of things that I didn't know 5 years ago that would make it much easier from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's do that. Let's talk about that 5 years. So tell us a little bit of the progression of your learnings over those 5 years to help you kind of go from kind of like maybe, and again, when you first started, were you still a little bit like more musculoskeletal, or were you still kind of in that subluxation mindset or neurological focused, and then just kind of like narrowed it in or snugged up your focus?
So I think mentally I wasn't in that musculoskeletal mindset, but we were still practicing that way. So I was really surprised. We opened a clinic and I thought everything would just go differently. And it was exactly the way it went in every other clinic I worked. And I thought, okay, maybe we have to change something ourselves.
What's the commonality here? Oh, it's me. Yeah.
I mean, we listened to so many podcasts when we were traveling or commuting to our workplaces. So we had a lot of cool influence from really cool chiropractors, from great podcasts. So Carl made the decision to hire a tutor or a mentor, which was Donald Francis, because we both were heavily influenced by SOT. And he was our very first mentor, and he really triggered so many things in me. But I know this feeling now, when somebody triggers something in me, either it's when your first reaction is like, that will never work for us. No way. Then I already know now, when I have that feeling, I probably have to work a little bit on this, and probably it's going to be a big change if I ever integrate it, but I usually do. And we really did. So he made us question a lot of things, and we changed a lot through him. And I think we coached with him for quite some time. And then I think once we had our first child, we stopped coaching, but obviously still mentoring with other people. And I think that has been a really big help and change to where we want to get or where we want to go to in terms of business and chiropractic and general life, really. And that really helped us to form the practice that I now can run, even though Carl has injured his leg.
We'll talk about that in a second. That's going to come up. That's really that's unfortunate, but it's a challenge that you've raised the bar to. So tell us a little bit about too, when did you first meet? I was trying to talk to Brandy and I was like, when did we first meet you? When did you first hear about Brandy?
Again, Donald Francis introduced us to you, I
Well,
think.
there you go.
Yes, he said the vitality shift. He
Yep.
said, Aileen, it's this program. I think you should really do it. I think it's going to benefit you loads. So this was actually one of the things that I didn't question that he told me. So I thought, okay, let's sign up for and then we had to wait because you only open the vitality shift every now and again. So we waited, and when you opened it, we purchased it, and we went through the whole program. We integrated every test, and this has been a massive change as well. Do your evaluations and reevaluate after a sensible adjustment plan as well. And it's just so amazing the changes you see, and that really motivates you again to be like, okay, let's see what else we can do and what we can achieve. And that's how we got introduced to you. And then I joined the Informed Chiropractor as well, I think a few years afterwards.
Yes. Well, and it's funny because I know, especially with the vitality shift, it helped us to kind of measure little mile markers along the way, because we always talk about as a practice members under care, like we want to be their little celebration of little wins, but if we're not measuring enough stuff, it's hard to pay attention. And then of course we will talk about the polyvagal theory in a second, because that even takes it to another level, because then we can be more aware of like facial expressions and the way their eyes look and their voice and their breathing and all that kind of stuff. But it does almost give the chiropractor, I feel, almost more enthusiasm, because you see this stuff happening more and more. And if you don't know to measure it, like I've said this many times before, a lot of chiropractors didn't think they're that good at chiropractors, but it was just because they weren't measuring what they were doing. And if you measure it, you're like, whoa, maybe I'm pretty good.
Yeah. And also knowing, but for me, what has changed a lot through the experience of now doing these tests for 5 years is also understanding the difference of results. And pre-framing that for the practice member. And we do a lot of SOT, we do a lot of BGI, so tonal technique. I do adjust a lot as well, but some people would say, what, you don't do manual adjustings? Like there can't be any change. And I'm like, just let me show you the 2,000 cases I have.
It gives you so much confidence. You're like, oh,
it
yeah,
really does.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just cool to see. I think in the end, if you do the technique you do on a very high skill level and with a good intention, you are going to create change in that nervous system, and that is going to create the changes. And it doesn't matter if you do a tonal technique or manual adjusting.
Yeah, well, and again, especially the more the more I get into teaching technique, the more I'm really focusing on just paying attention to what is the outcome. What we want: decreased tone. We want cues of safety through the whole Macdonald safety corridor. And however you get there, it doesn't matter. And that's the creativity of a chiropractor, I find, is that then we get to use the skills that we've learned and the different tools that we have to get them there. And then we'll do it, and then use what we feel is going to help them get there. So I think that makes you more of like an artist. That feels like an artist when you're as a chiropractor. So that's pretty cool. Knowing just learning a bit about the polyvagal theory to you, just because you've come to a few of our seminars there in England, and you brought the new baby out to Dublin, and so tell me a little bit about your learnings from the polyvagal theory and some of the things that you've used from the polyvagal theory to implement in your life or practice.
So what I start with my personal, because I think once you are regulated, you can do it much better anyway. So I feel like with this whole, I'm not deep down in the theory of polyvagal.
Yeah.
I have read a little bit around it, so I kind of know what's going on, I think. But for me, the biggest change is how do I feel safe? What is that feeling inside me? Like, how do I feel regulated? And generally understanding my feelings, like, what do I feel now? And what is this appropriate, or is there something I can be doing to help regulate myself again? I think that has made a massive difference in my personal life with the kids, with my husband, in business life. I have a few employees, not associates, but receptionists and tech CAs and whatever. And then also being a chiropractor, because only if you're regulated, there's only the space then that you can actually help somebody else to regulate and feel safe. And that can happen in 2 to 5 minutes. They don't have to lie there for 45 minutes or 30 minutes. And I don't need to massage their upper traps to achieve that. And yes, what I adjust, like when I see a patient, I watch out for very different things. Like you said, how does their face look? What is their language? Can they even communicate? Because that is one of my most favorite quotes, and I cannot quote it, but Brandy Macdonald says it all the time. You can only really communicate when you're regulated, because communication is a skill that's absent when you're not regulated very well.
Yes.
So yeah, I watched them. I just watched them. What person is this? What life history does it have? Like, what do they have? Do they want to open up, or do they not want to open up? Which both is completely fine for me, because I don't really need to hear what trauma happened to them, because you feel their spine, you check out the body, and you're like, yeah, okay, there's a lot of tension here, and I know how to release that, and I know your body's going to calm down. And the amount of time it happens that people fall asleep on my bench, like 2 weeks ago, there was somebody who was snoring really loudly, and I have an open adjusting room, and I thought I might have to wake him up because it got a bit too loud. Anyway, so, and adjusting wise, I focus on a few different things, and I focus more on what I've been doing already anyway. Yeah. So ribs, I find super important. Occiput, something I never adjusted. Like 1.5 years ago, I never would adjust an occiput just because I couldn't. And then I went to your seminar and another adjusting seminar. And since then I'm adjusting occiputs, and I think that makes a massive difference. A bit cranials, and then the front as well, the anterior part, which is part of SOT anyway, and BGI as well. So I'm just going to I'm diving down more into those areas as well. And it's so interesting. You touch areas and they're like, oh, I feel that. And I'm like, yeah, I feel
what's
that tension
I
too.
like it when they say, what's that? What's that?
Yeah. And sometimes, I love asking, what do you think it is? Because oftentimes they have the answer anyway. Like, people have tensions in their stomach area or in their uterine area or somewhere like that. And they know why they have tension there. And yeah, so I think that's the biggest changes I've done in practice since doing the polyvagal, which is not obviously practice, but encompassing my whole life. But I had such a cool. Sorry, I'm going a bit longer here, but
no, don't you worry.
A cool case of a few weeks ago, a lady who had a few really bad car accidents, and I looked in her face, and totally skewed facial features. She was only using the left side of her face to facial expressions, and she kept having really heavy dizziness for the last 2 years after her last car accident. And she just said, I just don't know why. And in my head, I looked at that person, I thought, oh my God, I know why, because look at you, your body is literally screaming completely dysregulation. You're only using half the side of your face. You look as if you had a stroke, which you didn't have, but super interesting that nobody has ever pointed that out to her. And I adjusted her once. She came back and she said, I don't know what you did, but something changed. And I looked in her face, and she was starting to use both sides of her face, but smiling, her eyes. I was like, yeah, something has changed.
Do you take pictures at all?
Unfortunately not. Okay. Unfortunately not.
Because that's the one, the
But
cool thing is if you ever see that in the future, like, especially if it's, you don't have to do it on everybody, but if you see something like that, we always love to just grab one of the chiropractic assistants, come in, take a picture, and then take the picture again, either after the after that visit or a couple of visits later, because it's great because we see that. But like when you put it for the practice member and you put those pictures side by side, they like lose their mind because they're like, what the heck?
I mean, I'm losing my mind because I thought as well, what? That's a one adjustment. And I do big care plans as well, you know,
Yeah.
and I think crazy though what you sometimes can achieve in one adjustment.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like especially the more they're on the one aspect where they're super dysregulated, anything is going to have, it's always going to be the biggest change at the very beginning. And then later on, it's always about like how many times it's almost hitting like the reset button of the regulation. Like we're always, you know, everything in life kind of will put us a little bit on dysregulated, but the whole thing is being able to close that refractory period to pop back quickly. And so I think those adjustments are just like kind of keeping that reset so that we can kind of tune into what that actually feels like. But it's funny because a lot of practice members don't even know what it feels like to be regulated, because some of them actually have probably never been regulated, so they don't even know what that feels like. And
Yeah.
that's why sometimes after the first adjustment they'll be like they can't even explain it. They're just like, that's like different, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very cool. So talking about being dysregulated, now you have all your skills on help on with your self-regulation. Tell the listeners a little bit about your tobogganing episode with your family.
Our recent incident.
Yes.
I feel it's really funny because just at New Year's, so a few months ago, I thought this year is going to be really chilled for me. I'm not pregnant. I'm not expecting a child. I have a great team at the moment in the running the clinic. So yeah, and then I think that was 31st of December, and 3 weeks later we go tobogganing or sleighing with our kids on a very tiny hill, and Carl goes ahead and breaks his leg.
Like not
And he
even
is,
breaks his leg, like not like a 6-week break and then you're back,
oh
right?
no. So he broke his tibia and fibula, and the tibia actually split back on the back. So they had to operate from the back, and he completely dislocated his talocrural joint as well. It was super interesting because I was with my back towards him, and he started screaming, and I turned around, and he is just shooting up. He was still on the floor, and he is shooting up, and he's like, Aileen, I broke my leg. And my eyes see his foot, and my eyes say, yes, that leg is definitely broken. The question is only how much is broken. But my head says, no, you are the main income earner of our family. You cannot break your leg. So I had this fight with my eyes and my brain.
That was like immediately, right? Because like he predominantly sees most of the practice members, right? In the
Yes,
practice. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So and again, this is what happens when you work like husband and wife together, or this would just be freaky too, even if like you weren't a chiropractor, if the chiropractor, whether it was male or female, broke their leg, that's the first thing that goes through your head. I remember as a child, my dad, he delivered milk and delivered pop and do all stuff, but it was all physical labor. And one time we went skiing and he wiped out in front of me. Like I remember I must have been like in grade 9 or something like that, grade 9 or 10, maybe about 8, probably about 14. And the first thing I thought is like, because we've been trained our whole life, if dad gets hurt, we're in serious trouble. Because
Yeah.
because it was physical work. And like that's probably the first thing that went through your head is you're like, I'm so sorry about your leg, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was like the first 2 or 3 seconds. And then immediately I was like, I have to shut this emotion away, because then I was obviously running to Carl and being like, okay, what's happening?
Yeah.
Obviously, what is happening?
Why
But
is
then
your
I
foot
started
facing the
hearing,
wrong way?
yeah. And then I started hearing this noise in the back, and I was like, oh damn, we have 3 little kids and they're standing behind me, and they're seeing Papa is really injured. So I turn around, and so Bonnie is our baby. She's only 10 months old. She obviously didn't understand anything. But Winnie, she's nearly 3, and Casper, he's 5. So they were really like, oh my God, what is happening? And he was hyperventilating. So he was really in shock. So I actually from that point onward, I couldn't look after Carl. I had to look after the kids, and the helicopter came, so it was quite, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah. They didn't take him because they said he's not serious enough, so they then called an ambulance. But this whole time, and it was super interesting because immediately I went to, but it wasn't that traumatizing because he wasn't in life-threatening danger. He's still alive. And then I was like, no, it was very traumatizing for
Yeah.
all of us.
Yes.
And yes, so he broke his leg 6 weeks ago now, and he had a surgery which was really, really yeah, weird for us because we never had surgery, luckily. I gave
Yeah.
birth at home, so we're generally very natural people. I don't remember last time I took any medication, the same for Carl, and then he has to go to have the surgery to put plates in his leg and screws and anesthesia and all of these things.
Yeah, that's so good old limitations of matter, baby.
The good thing is his mobility was so terrible beforehand, so I think that's going to give him a kick to improve his mobility, especially in his talocrural joints.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's going to be out of practice until June or July, and even then he's just going to start from very low volume or just half a day or whatever. So not the same what he's doing now. So for the last 6 weeks, I've been taking over the whole chiropractic side as well. On top of like I said, we have small kids. They still not sleep through the night, or at least the baby. So yes, that's been a very different experience as well.
So you told me this right before we got on the call, but you went from, that was a Sunday, right, that he broke his leg?
Yes.
So you're just going along your happy late way going 2024 is going to be so chill. And then on a Sunday, you suddenly go from like that to now you're going to be seeing the full brunt of all your people plus all his people working
Yes.
full time in the office.
Yes.
How did you get through that?
Well, the first 2 weeks were pretty crazy, and I was super dysregulated in those 2 weeks because I couldn't really, I really was like, okay, there's chaos behind the reception. We have to rebook so many people because I made the decision to only work afternoons, because when I have shitty nights, I want to have that freedom to have 1 or 2 hours in the morning where I can at least get some sleep. So yeah, there was a lot of chaos, and that wasn't good. But now that has gone down a little bit, or completely, luckily, because we got it all organized. And the adjustment side of things is so cool. It's so much fun. Like, I'm seeing, like I said, 4 people across 30 minutes, and it's actually going well. I've never seen that many people. Even when I was working my days, I would only see 3 people in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's really cool for me to see I can do it. It just takes a lot of focus and concentration and energy. So this is another thing, I'm so heavily drumming on my self-care, and Carlos as well, because he says, if you break down, that is not a scenario that any of us want to see.
You're the backup plan, and the backup plan can't fail as well. It's like the backup generator. You got the main generator, the backup generator. There's no more backups after this.
Well, luckily we do have the financial backup, because that is one thing that was always drummed into me as a kid. You always have to be financially stable. So we are okay, but I still need to go to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now I just had a week off, and I could recharge a little bit and actually start with a different approach to this whole situation, instead of being thrown into it on a Sunday night. And now
you have like
I
12 hours to prepare, kind of thing.
Yes, really. And now I had enough time to rewind, and I'm getting regular adjustments from a chiropractor who's close by, so that really helps. And yeah, just doing a lot of little things that help me recharge, so I can do those 4 or 5 hours I do work in a day, that I can really be there for the people, for the patients, but also be there for my kids, because they're obviously very emotionally demanding as well.
Yes, you're your mama co-regulator, right? Everybody needs their mama co-regulator, right? Well, coming to the end of the podcast, I really appreciate you taking the time out for spending some time with us all the way from Germany. We have chiropractors driving in their car, coming to work. They might be a little bit burnt out, stressed out. They actually might feel a little bit better about themselves hearing just what you had to go through.
I
But
hope so.
yeah, what kind of words of inspiration would you like to leave everybody with today?
It's super interesting. So I thought about this a lot. When you everybody wants something from the universe. So when you demand things, be specific. Because I said I want more time with Carl and I want to be more in the office. That's what I literally said on New Year's Eve. And 3 weeks later, the universe provides.
So be
So
extremely clear.
be specific what you wish for your life or what you want in your life to change.
Yeah.
And then yes, just it's it's always possible. You just have to make it possible. Like look after yourself, find good co-regulators, have a good community, and nourish those things as well on a regular basis. And then I do think mostly the things that we want are possible in life, or that the things that get thrown to us that we don't actually want it, but we can still achieve them, or we can still get through those times. I think that's it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I always like to throw this last question before we go. Now going through all your life experience, you've had lots of things go on in your life. I always like the time travel thing. So if you go back and talk to your younger self when you're 18, what kind of words of advice would you give your younger self?
I would actually tell myself, do everything the way you did it, because I always did everything by gut feeling. And I think that's the way to go through life. Either it feels good or it doesn't feel good. And if it feels good, go for it, even if you're scared. And if it doesn't feel good, don't do it, even if everybody says, no, it's the sensible thing to do. And then also don't be too hard on yourself, because again, better done than perfect. Like just start doing it and then you can make it better, but it's not going to be perfect from the get-go. So
Mhm.
I think that's what would I tell myself
Yeah. Well, it's good.
back when I was
It's always
18.
good to say, keep doing more of what you're doing. But again, I think as a younger person, you need that advice. Like what you feel is right. Because
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
we're taught what you feel is wrong. So,
Yeah.
so listen to it. So, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was a good time.
And for everybody out there, I hope you got some good tidbits and little bits of inspiration. When you think your life is busy, just imagine what Dr. Aileen had to go through. Looking after 3 children and a broken leg husband and a whole practice full of practice members. So we know we can do a lot more with the resources that we have. So I hope you guys are all doing well. And until next time, you guys have a great day and we'll see you in a couple weeks.